identifying gaps where something's being done inefficiently or wrong is a business opportunity. How many businesses are born out of being able to do that, whether it be a different way to underwrite loans, a different way to underwrite insurance, reducing friction on the borrowing process, make it easy, make it a couple of clicks. Consumers don't have the patience, and businesses are born out of solving problems for things that are inefficient.
The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Tyfone. Tyfone is the creator of Infinia, a dramatically better digital banking platform for community financial institutions, as well as several platform-agnostic revenue-generating point solutions. Our highly configurable platform and broad ecosystem of third-party partners ensure our entire suite is scalable and extensible to meet the needs of any FI. On our podcast, you will hear host Josh DeTar discuss today's most pressing financial technology topics with seasoned industry experts from every possible discipline.
Your podcast hasn't officially made it until there's ads in it, but this is one you're not going to want to skip past. And if you do, feel free to hit that fast forward 15 seconds button twice. Ever wonder what gives me my energy and enthusiasm during these podcasts? Outside of my relentless desire to learn about, connect, share, and build up community FIs and their mission to support the communities they serve? It's coffee, and lots of it. Now, you want to know what's better than your regular old coffee? How about donating $5 to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals through Credit Unions for Kids every time you purchase high-quality, ethically sourced coffee that also provides living wages to coffee farmers. So if you want to listen to this episode with epic levels of caffeine-induced focus and help kids in need, head to javaforkids.org to learn more and buy a bag or 10. Thanks.
Welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. My guest today is JB Orecchia, the founder and CEO of SavvyMoney. While I've known JB more closely just over the last few recent years, I've actually followed him for a lot more. And this may be the first time he's even hearing it, but it's because I have an immense amount of respect and admiration for him. He's actually kind of been a silent mentor to me. His passion for life, for happiness, and for seeing the people around him succeed is literally front and center in everything he does. JB is truly the life of the party. And if you've ever been to the Thunder Punch party at GAC, you know what I mean by that statement. He's never going to say no to a good time, a crazy idea, or an opportunity to host someone. He's got a never-ending smile, eternal optimism, and just a contagious energy. And he's parlayed that into how he approaches business and a passion for starting new companies and projects. And we've actually got some pretty cool stories to talk through today. So everything from Elvis impersonations to producing a movie to working at Disney. So how does all this tie into financial services? Well, as you know, I'm no stranger to wanting to talk about helping the American consumer with their financial health and futures. And honestly, JB is arguably even more passionate about that than I am. So JB, without further ado, welcome to the show, sir.
Josh, you're making me blush over here. So,
I mean,
appreciate the intro.
Nobody could see it with that gorgeous tan that you've got going on.
That Italian skin. I need to wear sunscreen once in a while.
You're one of those people that are like timeless and ageless in all the best ways. And
as you know, I just had a big birthday. So
I was gonna say, for everybody,
it's kind of funny in that 60 years. You know, when I used to think about 60 years, I'm like, man, that's old. And so I guess 60 is the new 50. So,
well, you don't look a day over 29.
Well, now I know you're lying.
So my wife, when she turned 30, was like, I'm turning 29 again. And then when it was 31, she was like, I'm turning 29 again.
Yeah.
And so I quickly learned that she was just going to forever be 29. And I happened to come across this birthday card one year, like in her early 30s, that just said, holy shit, you're 29 again. And And so I
Like
got
Jack
her
Benny,
that.
he was always 39, but I'm dating myself. Most people on this podcast.
Oh, really? He was always
don't know who Jack
39?
Benny is, but Jack Benny was always 39.
So when I found the card, I just bought a stack of them. So I've got like 75 of them in my toolbox in the garage. And every year I just give her another, you're 29 again card.
Yeah. Awesome.
But no, happy birthday, sir. I assume you had a phenomenal celebration of that.
Yeah, I downplayed it this year, although a bunch of my friends didn't want me to do that. So 50 was like a blowout. Big party, DJ. And this year my wife's like, you really don't want to do anything? And so my CFO actually planned a surprise party for me on Sunday and had a bunch of folks over, and guys
that's
at the
awesome.
club got together and we played dice and golfed. And so, yeah, and the team actually did a nice tribute. They put together a whole video, thanking me for, we have a lot of OGs here. And so it's kind of nice to reflect on, the early days of the company. And so anyway,
That's fun.
good stuff.
Well, I do want to talk a little bit about how you kind of build culture through passion. But before we do, I feel like we've got to touch on a couple of things that people are probably sitting there wondering about. So, you said for your 50th, you had a DJ, but it wasn't you, but it was supposed to be you back in the day, huh?
Yeah, no, in high school I would DJ. I was always the MC. It's funny, I thought my career was going to go into broadcasting. So this podcast is a little bit of like, meeting at 60 years old and being able to do, a show like this. It's kind of interesting, right? Because everyone's like, you have a radio voice. And are you saying I have a face for radio? Is
that a nice way of telling me?
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's good stuff. And early on when I graduated from college, my first job was actually, I was supposed to do Elvis impersonations and be a DJ at a nightclub called Shaboom in San Jose, and wasn't going to pay very much. And then a guy at the gym was like, hey, there's this finance job that opened up at Household Finance. And I'm like, Household Finance, what's that? Well, they make loans and, help consumers that are less than perfect credit. I'm like, tell me more about that. And what does it pay? And so it was actually, at the time, it was double what I'd be making as a DJ. And I had paid my way through college. So I was like, these student loans are pretty expensive. So let's do that for a little while. Right. And so I went and worked for this finance company, and 10 years later, I was still there. So it was a great opportunity. It was something I had no idea I was going to get into. I thought I was going to, pursue a career in broadcasting and TV and ultimately something like that. And that never happened. Life started and met my wife there.
That's so cool. So you met your wife there even?
I did. Yeah.
Huh.
She was an assistant in another branch and turned me down the first time I asked her out. She had heard rumors that I was a little bit of a player. All lies, all rumors.
All lies, all rumors, of course.
But then we met at the office, and she called her friend and said, hey, I like him. And, of course, I was playing it cool at that point. She had already turned me down. Yeah. So 8 years later, we dated for 8 years. That'll teach her for turning me down on the first date. Yeah.
And then
so we've been together, it's coming up 36 years.
I was going to say, yeah, I knew you were over 35, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you guys. So I guess the real question, though, then, JB, is can we still hire you for Elvis impersonations and DJing events?
You can know what I think. The layoff for my blue suede shoes.
Yes. So
thank you very much.
Tyfone Conference 2026. JB will be the keynote singer. That's awesome. Okay, so then,
well, the little funny story there, Josh.
Yeah.
While we're going off on tangents, so at HFC they had a 50s night, and I actually was the headliner. So I actually performed on stage. We might want to cut in a picture of that. I've got Elvis pictures.
Oh, please.
that you can see.
Yep, I'm gonna need that.
And the irony in that, so this is when I had just met my wife, and we weren't really dating that much yet. So she grew up actually going to Graceland. Like that was her family vacations. They would pile in the car and drive to Graceland like multiple times. She saw Elvis in concert like multiple times.
Oh, so
and guess
cool.
what our now 13-year-old Beagle's name is?
Is it Elvis?
It's Elvis. It's Elvis. He's awesome. He's getting a little slow now, but
Aw,
yeah. So, and I sang at our wedding, so pretty cool.
really?
Yeah.
I love that. See, that's what I mean. You're just one of the things that I've always respected about you is you're just kind of unabashedly you. You know what I mean? Like you just have fun with it. And I think that's a life lesson I think I wish I had learned earlier, if I'm being honest, JB. Like I always felt like, especially I wanted to be a part of and do great things. And I wanted to have an impact. And I thought that to do that, you had to play a certain part and do it a certain way. And now I've learned you can come at it from so many different ways. And it's a lot more fun when you just do it your own way. And you just have
That's
fun
right.
with it and just embrace it. And you kind of always just celebrated that. And I think too, like I was saying in your introduction, you know, one of the other things I've respected about you is you just don't say no. And I'm sure you've got stories where that didn't go so well, but the ones you remember are the ones that did because they kind of brought you to where you are today. And you've done a ton of crazy
fortunately,
things because you just
Josh,
didn't say no.
fortunately, early in my career in the branches, you did both lending and collections, right?
Okay.
And so one of the things you had to do was you had to do field calls. And so you had to go out and collect money in the
Yeah.
early days. And I'll never forget the one time I had to go on a collection account, and it was out in Oakland, and I went to a gentleman's house, and he opened the door just a little bit, and he goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm there in my suit and my suspenders," and he did not look very happy. And I said, "Sir, I just wanted to tell you that if you need some help making arrangements for payments," he goes, "Are you going to take my car?" And he actually had a little gun poke through like the tip of the door, and I was almost peed my pants. And I got back and I talked to my branch manager at the time, and I said, "Mr. Payton, I don't really like collections." And he's like, "Well," he goes, "you're leading the region in sales, and so Tony, you're 100% collections. JB, you're only doing sales." So I never had to do field calls after that. But literally, I think I might have peed my pants a little bit.
I mean, I don't think any of us would blame you.
And
I
I
probably would
wasn't going to
too.
be repoing his car. I was just trying to, he wasn't answering any phone calls. So it was a little scary.
I tell you what, so that's another thing I want to park and kind of come back to, JB, though, is that's the unfortunate reality of the world that we live in. And a lot of people really do have to do that really
Yeah. And
hard
by the way,
job.
time wise, this was like 1988, right?
Okay.
So we're going back some years, but I don't think folks do field call collections anymore.
But somebody still has to do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's still a tough job. But that's a tough job, and it's a tough place for everybody to be in, right? And the goal is to just keep people out of that place as much as possible in the first place. So I want to kind of park that and come back to it. But before we do, I want to round out this. So we go from being a DJ and an Elvis impersonator.
Well, I
to
never
like,
actually started, so they hadn't finished the facility yet.
Oh,
So I
really?
never ended up doing the DJing. I quit that job, right? We were going to have to dance on the bar tops and all that kind of stuff. And I took the finance job at Household. And it was probably some of the best training I've ever had. Like it was incredible just to understand how to make a loan, understand what people's finances are like,
Yeah.
personal things that they go through. We'll talk about that later, but that was at a base understanding of where there was a problem of people needing to really, get comfortable and get a handle on their bills.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is. I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast in the past. I mean, it's just finance is a really uncomfortable conversation for most Americans, unfortunately. Right. And that's across lots of different income levels and lots of different geographies and lots of demographics. Money is just, it's one of those things. It's like health and a couple other topics that people just don't love to talk about. But unfortunately, they're
And
really
your
important.
physical, how you feel, your health is often tied to your finances, right?
Absolutely.
Like it has a toll on your body. And if you can get
Absolutely.
that under control and feel in control, it has an impact on your health.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's so many of these things are so tied together. I mean, I hope he doesn't, listen to this and then, beat me up later for it. But I mean, we were literally just with my whole, so about every other Sunday, my whole family, my wife's side of the family, we all get together over at mom and dad's house and have family dinner.
Nice.
And last Sunday, I was talking to my brother-in-law, and he's been doing real estate for a while, which is, it's a tough sales job, and, huge highs and lows. In one of the things, he works for a small independent, essentially. And so he has no health insurance. And so he's looking at the costs to have his own health insurance. And he's married, he's got 2 young kids, and it's one of their single biggest expenses to have health insurance.
Yeah.
And so, and even then, it's not great. And it's his single biggest stress, JB, because it's a financial burden, which taxes his finances, but it also is directly tied to his and his family's physical health and well-being. So it's like a double compounding stress.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
you're 100% right. Like it's amazing how, inextricably tied to so many elements of our life, whether we realize it directly or not, our finances are. So getting it right or wrong literally is massively impactful for people. So yeah, I want to come back to this because this is actually kind of like the meat and potatoes of what I really want to talk to you about. But I think there's a little bit more of the story to getting to that point and why you're so personally passionate about it. And I think too, just kind of how you approached it. So you're there for 10 years, right?
Yeah, we need to circle back on that because there's some base there that we'll talk about in terms of, meeting with people at their house and at their kitchen table and them going through their finances. And you really learned a lot about folks in terms of how they're thinking about their finances, but also building a personal relationship to really help them get them on the right path, and how rewarding that was when they did, right? If you took a chance and you made a loan and they knew that you were going to have to stand behind that decision, because in the early days when you were managing a branch, like, you owned all the loans that you made and you had to like stand behind the character of those folks, and they felt a personal obligation. In fact, many times they would come into my branch and be there with their payment and making their payment and like, see, I told you I would be on time and make my payment.
Yeah.
And there was so much joy with doing that. And I think because that personalization was there and you were there across from their kitchen table and going through their finances and having a conversation, it's not like that anymore. Digital's kind of replaced that.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about meeting a consumer where they are and understanding what their situation is.
Oh, well, that was literally a perfect segue into, so you're doing this, right? And then, a part of this is you then get the idea to take this digital, right? And it started from going, and mailing people their credit reports, to people saying, hey, could you overnight those things to me? To you having the light bulb moment of, well, there's this whole internet thing that's kind of coming out. Like, maybe we could use that. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so I was in the branches and doing really well, but that was a constant treadmill of every month, hit your loan numbers. And I saw a position in the credit card division where it didn't pay as much, but it was marketing as opposed to being on the sales side. So I took a 50% pay cut to move divisions and work my way back up the food chain. And that's when I was, kind of early in my career. I'd been 6 years in the branches, went over to the card division and took over both building loyalty programs. So what I thought was cool about that is, how do you build programs that drive consumer behavior, right?
Okay.
And I picked up another division that was enhancement services, which was all, various benefits that you would get, insurance products, travel clubs. And one of the products was a credit score, our credit report product, where we mailed the credit reports in the mail. And we used to man the phones once in a while so you could always hear from consumers. And they were saying, hey, is there a way that you can, I'm going to apply for a loan. I'd like to see my credit report. You guys send it monthly. I need it tomorrow. So I pay the FedEx fee for you to send that to me. I started thinking, this internet thing's interesting. And that's where, kind of free credit report and free credit score was born, but originally freecreditreport.com, which was the first to ever deliver credit reports over the internet.
So that's kind of your first foray into entrepreneurism.
So I
too,
left
right?
and I joined. I wasn't the CEO of that company. They brought me in to run all of marketing, business development, and sales for that business, brand new idea. And at the time, my wife's like, you've been at Household 10 years, doing great. We just had a baby. So my daughter was 1 year old, my oldest daughter. This is 98, so she was born in 97. And she's like, is this really a good time to go do a startup? And I said, it's a perfect time because I can always go back and do this job. If I'm going to take a chance, I think this internet thing's going to be big. Fast forward.
That one worked out pretty well.
Fast forward 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's took the chance, and it was a grind early on. In fact, early days of raising money for that business, and it was more the CEO than me. Who cares about their credit report? Like, that was the feedback that we got initially when we were trying to raise money for that business. Like, who cares?
Apparently a lot.
And we fast forward to, we kind of created the space. I mean, you look at, Credit Karma that then followed suit, leveraged a lot of the marketing that we had done, changed the business model, but leveraged a lot of that marketing in order to build traction. And we know how big Karma got, sold into it for $7 billion.
Yeah. So how did you go from that to a stint at Disney and making a movie? Like, I feel like there's a gap there.
There's a gap. Yeah. So I retired from Experian after 10 years. We did great. And we built, when I left, it was approaching $1 billion business. And one of the board members that was on our board happened to run digital at Disney. And so he reached out and said, hey, we could use some of that marketing expertise over here. Would you be interested in doing some consulting? So I went and did some consulting. And then lo and behold, he's like, we want to offer you a position. We'll have you, fly out once a week. We'll cover your travel. We'll furnish you a condo in Hollywood. And so I did that for a while, like about a year and a half. And during that time, we were also approached with, hey, would you like to invest in a movie? And I was like, that sounds fun.
This is one of those JB doesn't know how to say no.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Sure.
And so anyway, so that was an interesting journey because in the beginning of that, we were executive producers, right? And so basically, that just means give me your money and get out of the way, right? So we started investing in this movie, and then they run out of money, and they're like, we need more money. And so we find out that the director at the time was peeling off some of the cash and spending money on other stuff. Yeah, that's a little bit of a rude awakening. So anyway, this is a little bit of a tangent, but we hire a new director. We fire that guy. We bring a new director in, and he says, oh, by the way, I have a script. I'm like, bro, you got to focus. Like, you got to fix this. I appreciate you have another thing. So one weekend, I actually read the script, and I'm like, who's going to star in this thing? Patrick Warburton, Putty from Seinfeld and Rules of Engagement. And I'm like, who else? Yeah, he's got a bunch of buddies that all want to do this like indie comedy. Andy Dick, Rena Sofer, Eric Roberts, Jason Alexander, Leah Thompson, Tom Bergeron from Dances with the Stars on him. So I go back to Ed, who was the CEO at freecreditscore.com at the time. We were partners on this movie.
Okay.
And I said, Ed, sometimes you got to pivot. I said, we need to put a bullet in this other football movie, which was starring Brian Bosworth, by the way, the Boz. And so we said, but this time we're not just writing checks. We're going to be on set. We're going to make sure this thing's getting managed. We're going to do the marketing, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we finished on time, on budget. Not a fantastic movie. Rock Slide with a Y. Like, it's cute indie comedy. But when you see the movie, you're like, look at all these stars in this movie. Like, how did all these guys like assemble to be in this movie? And Boz does a cameo in the movie as well.
Oh, cool.
So he had come on set to meet the new team, and what we had told him was, hey, we may go back and fix that other movie, but we need to try and like get this movie thing right. And this was a easier movie to make. It was lower production value, not all the big stadium scenes and that kind of stuff. Anyway, we did 3 film festivals, finished on time, on budget, sold it to Showtime, was on Showtime for a couple years. So
that's cool.
That was my brief stint in the movie. But by the way, didn't make, broke even on that movie, and decided probably better at fintech than I am at making movies, but it was a good experience. Good experience. Got to do the red carpet and, so.
That's fun. I don't know.
Fancy red carpet. We're talking like Dallas
just
AFI
red
Film
carpet.
Festival.
Yeah. No, yeah. I don't know. You can confirm or deny this for me.
I checked, made a movie. Check.
You got the t-shirt?
Yeah.
So you can confirm or deny this for me, but I've had a couple of friends who've done similar things to you, and not the like Avengers movie type of thing.
Yeah.
And they've said that making a movie is a lot like the wine industry.
Yeah.
And it's, how do you become a millionaire making movies or a winery? You start as a billionaire.
Yeah. No, I think the saying is, how do you make a small fortune? You start with a large one and you invest in movies, wineries, or restaurants.
I'm stealing that. That was that.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to go back to the whole Disney thing.
Yep.
There's a personal curiosity now.
Yep.
So when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So, I think folks have heard me talk about this before. I proposed to my wife at Disneyland.
Oh.
My wife and I are huge Disney dorks. We absolutely love to take the kids to Disney. I'm a huge fan of the fact that the credit union industry loves to do conferences at Disney.
Yep.
Because every one of them, I bring the fam.
Yep.
So, I mean, my 4.5-year-old has been to Disney probably far more times than most adults have ever been. And I'm not ashamed of that. And I love every minute of taking them there. Like, I'm the total, dad that's like, I'm loving every minute of it. I'm in the matching t-shirts, like whole ham. And I think it's because, look, there's all sorts of things with Disney. There's pros and cons and all the things that they do.
The brand's incredible.
But the brand's incredible.
And the passion behind the brand and the attention to detail, detail in the park, the detail in the movies.
Yes.
They're maniacal about the detail, and it shows, right? It's why that brand is held up for so many years. I mean, it was an incredible, like, just to see it and be part of it for the short time I was there, was awesome.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I wanted to get your take on. It's just, that's what has always impressed me is, when I'm there, I almost wear 2 different hats. And one of me is looking at it from like the business sense. And I'm trying to analyze every element of how they operate, how they do their business.
Every gum wrapper,
every little thing
bit
they
of
do.
paint,
Yeah.
every detail. Amazing.
And it is. Every detail. And so I'm like, one, they're just a phenomenal case study. They get used time and time again as case studies for that. But 2, it is just, what they say, I think really is true. Like, it's the happiest place on earth. And look, we can argue semantics of that. But when I watch my kids run around there, and when we come home and it's all they talk about for weeks on end, that's cool. I mean, just like the feeling I get as a parent watching my kids run around Disney is almost unmatched. I mean, it's just so much fun. And so what was that experience
so for me,
like?
The hard part was commuting on Monday, back on Thursday. I was coaching sports at the time, my son's teams. Sometimes I'd fly back multiple times, like fly back during the week, coach, get back on a 6 a.m. flight. Like, it was tough from a family standpoint.
I bet.
That was really the reason. I love the brand. I love the company. I had a huge kind of like CEO crush on Bob Iger. Like, his book is amazing. Yeah. And I actually got to meet him at an event. They had a bunch of the VPs come into an event, and it was pretty cool. I was like, oh, I want to go beat Bob Iger, right? And so I went up and I said, "Hey, nice to meet you. I'm JB Orecchia. I'm working in the digital group." He goes, "Oh yeah, Steve told me about you. Like, we're that guy, that internet guy we fly back and forth from Northern California." And I'm like, "Oh shoot, I must be showing up on the expense." Like, what are we doing with this guy? But he knew my name. He knew who I was. And I'm
That's
like,
cool.
this guy manages like a massive organization. How the heck does he know who I am?
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully I didn't do anything wrong, but yeah, he's amazing.
so
Like
cool.
if you read his book, Ride of a Lifetime, it is fantastic.
So what were some of the things that you took out of that experience that you then brought into just how you think about building culture, running companies?
Yeah. One of the kind of the things that I didn't love about it, a lot of folks have been there 15, 20 years. It's an amazing brand, amazing company. It was a little corporate, right? There was a lot of jockeying for position and when you get up
See
to the
that.
VP level. So politics at the company level, that happens. It happens in companies, but that was one thing I didn't like. What I did like was the maniacal attention to detail
Yeah.
of this is what the brand means. And it wasn't forced, it was authentic. Everybody bought into that. Everybody knew what had preceded them from a brand standpoint. And that runs through the veins of the culture. So that part I loved. And so from my standpoint, building a company, like you want to make sure that it's authentic, that everybody believes in what you're doing and is passionate about, solving whatever problem you're trying to solve. So I took that away. Like, wow, like no wonder these guys have been a leader for so long. It runs through the whole DNA of the culture. And so I took that away. But I also took away like, how do you create the right environment where everyone wants to help everybody else and there isn't as much jockeying for position? You're always going to get that a little bit because as you get closer to the top, there's less roles and it's human nature. But how do you do that in a right way? And I think the people that succeed authentically try and help the team out and really work as a team. And those are the ones that, aren't worried about getting credit for everything.
Yeah.
Because over time, that takes care of itself if you do it the right way.
Yeah, I agree. But that is hard when the corporate politics start to come into play. And
Yeah.
like you said, just human nature takes over. Somebody once told me something, JB, that always stuck with me. And they said, your brand is only as strong as your weakest employee's alignment to it. And, that's difficult as you get bigger. And to think about, the alignment to the brand and the culture of Disney at the number of employees.
Yeah.
I mean, down to, you were talking about, right? I mean, think about, I'm sure most of us have read the case studies on Walt Disney's obsession with garbage, hated garbage.
Yeah.
And so that's why, what is it? It's like no more than 13 feet or something ridiculous to any garbage can in a park. You're never further than like 13 feet or so. I'm probably off by a little bit on that number, but it's
Yeah, I don't
something
remember that
crazy like
stat,
that. But yeah, you're never no more than so many feet from a garbage can at a Disney park. And if you're ever there and you start looking around, you're like, yeah. But they also then do a great job of making them not look like garbage cans. And then you never actually see the garbage. And you never see garbage on the ground for more than like 2.4 seconds and somebody's on it.
Yeah.
And to think about that, like that is, let's be honest, probably someone making minimum wage in the park just picking up trash. But like they're so passionate about making sure there's no trash that there's no trash, right? Like there's just universal alignment to, hey, we want to create this incredible experience for our guests that is so central to just the core of all of our beings, that is the experience that somebody has when they're there. And I think that's what I think is so magical about it is they just go,
Well,
out of their way
if
to
you
host
think about it,
people.
Josh, it's a little bit. So I used to do plays in high school and college, and the Sunday matinee was always the grind because you'd done like 4 shows, and you're like, ugh. But somebody sitting in that seat is seeing the show for the first time. And if you think about your example of Disney, that person's experience at Disney may be their first time,
Yeah.
right? And so you can't get tired or you can't mail it in. And so same idea, like you're doing a production on the Sunday matinee and you're like dead tired and you probably partied on Saturday night because there was like a cast party or something like that. And you're like, I got to get up for this. Like this has to be as good as the first night, opening night production. Same energy. And I always applaud actors that have shows on Broadway that run for a long time and they bring it every single night because they know somebody sitting in that seat, that's their first experience and needs to be as good as the first experience. And if you think about just in life, in business, in interaction, like you always got to bring it because that's the first impression you're going to get. Or maybe the only impression.
I love that. This is a totally new takeaway for me. And one of the things that I really love about hosting this podcast, JB, is there's a lot of times, and I'm sure, this happens in our regular life, but I feel like it gets so exacerbated by hosting the podcast. There's so many things in life that I probably try to do subconsciously, maybe, right? Or just a part of how I operate. But when somebody says it in a very, very direct manner that just really sinks in and resonates with you, I think it makes it more front and center. And the way you just articulated that is, that's never going to leave my brain. Like that just took up permanent residency in my brain. And it's funny that it like explains everything about you. I mentioned in my opening, like I've watched you since I started in this industry and you've just never wavered. You just have always had the same level of energy and enthusiasm. I never see this like tired, rundown JB who's just like, yeah, dude, like I'm just here because somebody told me I had to be. Like you always show up with the same level of energy, with the same level of enthusiasm. And, when somebody meets you for the first time, I hope this doesn't offend you. Please understand it's coming from a place of love.
You're going to say
but
some
like,
of my best friends hated me.
Yeah. They're like this. There's no way this dude's genuine. Like there's no way somebody's this happy and this excited and this passionate all the time. He's just putting on a front. And then 10 years later, they're like, son of a gun, like it ain't a front. Like this is just him. It's always the same. But to your point, like somebody who's known you for decades knows that. But if one day you show up and you're just not JB, and you're just not happy, you're just not passionate, and you're just not feeling it, and you're like, yeah, that whole thing we do, I mean, it's fine. It collects a paycheck, whatever. That's their experience with you. That's what they're left with.
That's right.
But if every single time you show up, whether it's Friday night or Sunday afternoon, with the same level of energy, that's what brings the consistency. And I think that, like, what just triggered for me is that's how people recognize genuineness.
Yeah, I think it has to start at your core, right? And so you need to be doing something you're passionate about, and you have to genuinely like people, I think. And some people are more introverted, and some people are clearly extroverted.
Clearly.
But authenticity and like how you interact with people is super important, right? And there's going to be days I'm tired. I'm not like, I guess maybe my energy is pretty high, but like from my standpoint, not every day you feel like that.
Yeah.
But always you have to get back to the core of what you're doing, when you're interacting. Does it, because when you stop caring or stop being happy, you might as well move on and do something else because that's not fair to everyone around you. So it has to be authentic. You can't force it, right? It has to be where you have got a right alignment with what you're doing, who you're interacting with, and your motives in terms of, how you want to succeed together is super important because work's work, right? But work has to feel like it's meaningful. And I think relationships, especially in our space, is authentic relationships is super, super important.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think it's worth stating too. None of us are perfect, right? I'm not saying that you don't ever have bad days or that, you don't wake up on the wrong side of the bed every once in a while.
Yeah,
But
my wife would probably
yeah,
say otherwise.
she can attest
Right?
to the bad days.
Yeah.
But I think of life like the stock market, right? If you zoom in, I mean, it's terrifying is doing this, right? But if you zoom out far enough, you can get a pretty straight and consistent line.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much up and to the right. And I think, yes, if you only have one single interaction with another human, and that's it, that's the only interaction you ever have with them, they're going to judge you based on that one single interaction, right? But if they interact with you over a period of time, they're going to look at the culmination of all of those interactions. And if the culmination of all of those interactions is up and to the right, that's your genuine self, right? And I think that's what you're saying is you put in the effort to want to make sure that while we're not going to be perfect, we're up and to the right if people look at us over the time. Okay, so coming back to now you've had some fun, you've done the movie, you've done the Disney thing. I mean, I'm gonna put some words in your mouth, but you even talked about this when I was asking you about like how to introduce you for today. And you were saying, something that's always just been a part of your core, and it came from your mom, was just this genuine desire to be the host. Look, if there was going to be somebody that brought the neighborhood together, it was going to be us. It was going to be at our house. And then, that became your house when you had kids and they got into sports. And even today, right? Like you're the one that wants to have the Super Bowl party at your house and
And the draft party.
the draft party and
Fantasy
all the
draft.
things. Like you want to be the one that hosts that connecting of other people. And I think a lot of that is some of the reasoning why you got so passionate about the whole credit reporting side of things too, is those experiences you had connecting and going in and sitting down with people and understanding their finances. And, whether we like it or not, you can tell a lot about people based on where and how they spend their money, right? And then being able to be a positive force for helping them to get to a positive financial health and future can be a really cool impact. And that's like you being the host and bringing people together and just helping uplift the neighborhood and the community. So how did that bring you kind of full circle into doing this all over again?
Yeah, I think as I looked at the space and I thought about what we had done with freecreditscore.com and really elevated the interest level of that. And then I saw what Karma did and I was like, whoa, I was pretty smart, right? Like drafting off of the kind of all the advertising and the awareness that we did, but really changing and solving a problem, right? So freecreditscore.com wasn't free. It was a subscription service, right? The early products in that space were subscription services. And what Ken Lin did was that, no, we're gonna break this. We're gonna actually do something that is completely free, and we're gonna monetize through advertising because these consumers need to see better products. Why else do you manage your credit? You manage your credit to save money on borrowing. And ultimately that savings over time, if you do it right, can contribute to building wealth once your debt gets paid down. And the lower interest rates you pay over time, that means that you'll be able to, save for the future. And so as I looked at that, I came out of financial services, right? So I worked for a financial institution. And I said, if you're a financial institution, do you really want the customers that you work so hard to build a deep relationship with going to a third party and then losing them to advertising? You pay good marketing dollars to acquire those consumers.
Yeah.
And so I thought, hey, there's a gap here where this product really needs to be built into digital banking and be part of that relationship that the financial institution has with their customer or member, in that case of a credit union. And so that's what started that journey, and it took hold. And then from there, how do you identify where are there gaps for the financial institution? Because the financial institution really cares about, they care about making money, right? But they also care about, am I helping my consumers be better, right? if that means a lower rate on a car loan or a balance transfer or giving them a better rate on their deposits, like how do we highlight those things and how do you make it relevant? And so, solving that problem and providing the resources was really what I set out to do. Because if you can enable the financial institution to do a better job of connecting with their consumer through various tools, and then you also do a good job of servicing the consumer, that's a win-win at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what we've leaned in to do.
Okay, so go back to, you said you learned a lot from just going in and sitting down with people at their kitchen tables. Like, what were some of the things that you learned and saw and experiences that you had that I guess kind of doubled down your passion on, hey man,
Yeah.
it's really important to actually help the American consumer with their finances?
They didn't understand.
Yeah.
They didn't understand how they were being evaluated, and in lending, it's a complex model of both understanding cash flow as well as understanding the correlation between how you pay your bills, right? And what things are they measuring that I'm going to be viewed as a credit risk? It's all math, right? But sometimes it's not fair. Sometimes the math isn't fair. Different things happen, but understanding your utilization rate, understanding, hey, I need to show or demonstrate that I pay my bills on time, because that's an indicator, in a math equation that I'm going to be less of a credit risk. And so all those things together, and also not overspending, right? So I make a certain amount of money and I have a certain amount of discretionary spending. And so if that ratio gets out of whack, I'm a bad credit risk, because if something happens, my car breaks down or there's an expense that I have, like, you don't have those funds. So then the likelihood of that loan being paid back is impacted, right? So first thing that was just evident to me at a kitchen table early in my career is like, these guys don't understand how this works, right? And so how do you take that in the digital world and really bring it to the consumer and let them understand how that, how that all comes together? And it's not gaming the system, it's understanding the system.
Yeah.
And it's, being able to make decisions that will impact how you're viewed by those institutions that are lending you money.
It is, you see just so many examples of this. And I think the, auto purchasing is probably one of the easiest examples to pick on. And, I was just talking to my in-laws at family dinner the other night. And so my in-laws are, getting a few more years on them. And my father-in-law retired a few years ago. He was a very successful partner in a gastroenterology clinic, a physician who put himself through med school in Guadalajara, Mexico, and just worked his tail off and retired a couple of years ago. And he has, like, his daily is a Ford F-150 for kind of the, the Oregon weather. But he's got an older BMW M3 that he's had for forever. And then mom had like a BMW 5 Series. And they've always been a BMW family. And so they've had tons of BMWs over the years. And they always buy them from the same dealership and like have this long-standing relationship with them and everything. Well, they finally decided like getting in and out of the sports cars and the 5 Series was getting a little bit tougher. And so they're like, we don't need 3 cars. Like, we're going to get rid of the M3 and the 5 Series, and we're going to get an SUV. And so we'll have a small, SUV and the truck. And so they went and looked at a bunch of different SUVs, and mom ultimately, shocking, ended up with an X5 BMW.
That's what my wife has.
Yeah. And so they, they go to the same BMW dealership, they go to buy it. And the reason I'm telling this story is my mother-in-law was literally just telling me about how much it drove her nuts, because they were going to meet us to do something and they ended up not being able to because they spent 6 hours at the dealership, JB. And this is, the whatever number BMW they bought through them. Obviously, my father-in-law, is in a position to be able to buy the car, all of this. They ended up wanting to finance through BMW Financial because they had some special financing rates and everything, and just leveraging that instrument and all of these things. But the point is, my mother-in-law was just going absolutely stir crazy with the salesperson because he kept doing well, what do you want your monthly payment to be? And my mother-in-law was like, I don't care. I want the cheapest rate that I can get. The payment number doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't want you shuffling a bunch of other things and I end up paying more just so I can save $50 a month on my monthly payment. Like, I know how this works. That's not what I want. I want to pay a reasonable price for the car with the lowest financing option that we can qualify for, which is your lowest. And then that's the end of it. And we're done. Like, this should be very simple, right? And so it's a complicated system that is a lot of times based on incentives and different things, not in the best interest of the consumer. And so, thankfully, my mother and father-in-law are educated in the world of finance and how these things work. And they ended up pushing back and finally got what they wanted. It just took forever. But, you think of how many people get into a bad situation because they just don't understand how those instruments and levers all work. They don't understand what their actual buying power may or may not be. And at the same time, somebody sent me a link to this TikTok recently that's this car salesman who's like, his tactic for getting new customers is he posts, these outrageous videos of him helping his clients get cars. And then he shows the breakdown for how he made it so that they could afford these cars. And it's things like, Mustangs and Corvettes and, Charger Hellcats and stuff like that. So it's these sports cars that people want and they think are out of reach. And I'm not kidding, JB. The reason a friend sent it to me was he was like, dude, you got to look at some of these numbers. And, the guy's putting people into these 8 and 9 year loans at like 25% interest. But he's like, I got him out the door for $250 a month.
Yeah.
And people are like, that's awesome. I could drive that car for $250 a month. And exactly what you were just saying is that's what we're trying to help people avoid is understanding that, yes, that may look appealing, but one, your lifetime payment of the loan is astronomical. And two, you're paying it off so incredibly slow that you're not even close to touching the diminishing value of that vehicle. So when the time comes, which it absolutely will, that you've got to get out from under that, you're so far behind now that gets rolled into negative equity in the next deal that you've got, or you've got to figure out how to come up with the money for that. So what does it do? The point of all of this is it just snowballs people, right? And I think this is a part of the problem that we see in so many people's lives is without the education, without the tools, without the information and the data, it's really easy for us to make poor decisions. And man, it's really terrifying how one bad decision can quickly snowball over the course of a couple of years and go from being just not great to being like, man, now all of a sudden we have a family who's trying to figure out how to pay their mortgage. And that's terrifying to me, man.
Yeah, I think it's knowing your audience, right? And if you want that repeat, you may get that deal closed that one time, but eventually, the ether on that conversation is going to wear off and the person's not going to come back. And so you're better off knowing your audience, knowing the situation and doing the right thing, even if you don't make as much money in that scenario, because you'll have a customer for life.
Yeah. I mean, but that's how people like you and I think. Unfortunately, there's, salespeople out there that don't necessarily think that way. But I mean, I guess that's just, for me, that's also why I've been really passionate about trying to get out the education, get out the tools. And I think that's a lot of been your journey too, right?
Yeah, I think the other piece is a means to an end. So managing a credit, great. I get a good credit score, great. Well, what does that mean to me? So if I take my score from 650 to 720, well, the implications of that are all the rates on everything you borrow on go down. Mm-hmm. Well, that over 5 years is a material number, right? And so that all starts to add up. And so there's real value. I think the other thing you're going to see in the coming years that's going to become more prominent is cash flow underwriting. You've got a lot of consumers out there that are thin file, that need to build credit, but they make plenty of money, or they're working 2 jobs, or they're part of the gig economy, driving for Uber, or doing bartending, or maybe they're in a commission job or something. And when you look at their cash flow looks pretty good relative to how much they're spending. It's, inflow and outflow on their accounts. So I think you're going to see that start to pick up steam in the coming years, to allow those folks to build credit, because in some cases you're credit invisible, but you're not a bad credit risk.
Okay, that brings me to an interesting. I would love to get your perspective on this, JB. So, how do you think the amount of data that we now have more readily accessible, coupled with the computing tools and powers that we have today to be able to assess that data, at the rate at which that's climbing, how do you think that's going to change things? I was just talking to, it's funny, all these examples coming out of family dinner from just the other night. So my brother-in-law is a private jet pilot. And he flies for a big company, and he flies, the owners and the executive team around. And we got to talking about life insurance. And he recently had decided that he had only had a small amount from forever ago. And he was like, I probably should have more. I'm the sole breadwinner for my family. And so he was starting to look at rates. And you know where I'm going with this. He's now in his late 30s, and the insurance companies see him as a super high risk.
Because he's a pilot.
Later in life, and he's a pilot. And so Thomas and I got to talking about it, and he was like, yeah, but you know what's crazy about this? Is he goes, statistically, we are actually one of the safest profiles. We have some of the longest life expectancies. We actually have, for all intents and purposes, a relatively low stress job. We have very low risk of anything other than careening our airplane into a mountain. And he said the jet specifically that he flies, JB, 0 crashes, not even like fatalities, 0 crashes in its history. And he was like, you look at so many other professions and they are far more dangerous than I am as a pilot. He goes, but the way they still look at it, they're like, are you a pilot? Oh, through the roof.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that'll change over time. With
So that's the question.
More
So
data,
will
machine
data
learning. It's a
change
regression model,
that?
right? You can correlate the expected, fatality rate or whatever based on what do you fly for, what do you do, what's your health like. I mean, he's probably getting his rates from the wrong insurance company. He needs to find a more sophisticated one.
Yeah, well, that was just it, and that was literally the conversation he and I were having. Was he said, if you're flying like a bush plane in Alaska, he's like, hey, you got like a 50-50 shot of making it. Yeah. He's like, but if you fly a jet like I do in the corporate role that I do, he's like, literally on record, 0 crashes ever. I'm like the safest bet ever. Yeah. And that was what we were talking about. Is we said, there's a real opportunity if there doesn't exist already, for an insurance company to come in and say, hey, we're going to provide life insurance for pilots, but we're going to analyze the type of flying you do, the type of plane you operate, all of these things, and we're the life insurance company for pilots. And maybe that does exist, and I just haven't looked into it, right?
I mean, if you think about anything, and you bring this full circle, right? Identifying gaps where something's being done inefficiently or wrong is a business opportunity. How many businesses are born out of being able to do that, whether it be a different way to underwrite loans, a different way to underwrite insurance, reducing friction on the borrowing process, make it easy, make it a couple of clicks. Consumers don't have the patience, and businesses are born out of solving problems for things that are inefficient. And whatever you're doing, whether it's a digital banking platform or a financial service or shopping experience like Amazon, think of how many things that they've made easy to then build up, a following. And someone will come along and with AI now, who knows? The sky's the limit in terms of reducing friction, adding more usability, being more relevant to the consumer, all those things in the next, it's going fast. Like in the next 2 to 3 years, I can't imagine where we're going to be with AI, because it's allowing folks who have an idea to solve those problems a lot faster.
Yeah. So, okay, so coming back, I'd love to get your perspective on, so what do you think this will have impacts on in terms of kind of what you were just talking about, right? Like somebody who's kind of flat file and maybe, has good cash flow, but just
Yep.
not good credit. How do you think the amount of data, how we're analyzing the data, how even just the economy is changing and how people operate is changing? How do you think this is going to impact how specifically the people we serve, right? Community financial institutions that care about deep relationships with customers. How do you think that's going to impact how they view and treat relationships, especially if that relationship they have with someone is all digital? And say, hey, I'm going to build a deep relationship with you. I'm going to understand who is JB versus who is Josh. And then how do I help align getting them the products and services that they need and qualify for based on a much better profile of them than I've had in the past?
Yeah, I think it's with AI and the historical data, you're building more of a personalized connection and conversation with the consumer that edits itself along the way. So if you think about how things are done primarily today, it's somewhat static. I look at where you're at right now and I make a decision. I calculate what you're doing now and I make a decision, right? As opposed to build up some historical data, look for patterns, allow the consumer to interact with you, and that interaction builds a persona and a profile that learns. And it learns tendencies and it learns what's important to you. And it'll be able to forecast into the future, these are the things you should do, and it'll allow it to reset. So life's not a kind of a continuous line. There's always kind of setbacks along the way. So how do you then re-age the recommendation and plot a new course? It's kind of like if you use an Aura or a what's that other thing called, the Whoop.
Oh, yeah.
Those things in it, and it basically measures kind of over time, and it gives you feedback. And I think that's what's going to happen going forward. And companies that identify gaps in the consumer experience where needs are not being met, where it's not course correcting, we're going to be able to do that going forward. And the companies that do it well, that build trust with the consumer, are gonna survive.
I mean, I think that's a really big area of opportunity for our industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we've been talking about the concept of personalization in financial services for a long time. And I think there's a lot of different, elements to that. One that gets talked about a lot is just, I log into digital banking and I get to see a picture of my dog as the background and it says, "Hi, Josh," instead of just, a blank screen. And I can move and drop my widgets around and change my menu order. And I argue, sure, some of that stuff, it adds a little bit of value, but it's pretty tertiary. And where the real value to people is offering personalized understanding of who I am and not just as a snapshot in time. I think what you were saying is so important. It's looking at what is the culmination of what got me to where I am today? Where is that taking me? And how can we alter that for the better? And personalizing products and services and how you build a relationship with me around that, that's personalization. But the financial services, like they have to have the products and services and the wherewithal to service me with that mindset to actually take advantage of the personalization.
Yeah, you have to meet the consumer where they are. So I think it starts with a conversation, and can be a digital conversation, right? Like, what are your goals? Where do you want to get to? How are you feeling today? Where do you have concerns? As early as, do I even have an emergency fund if something goes wrong? Like little things like that. And then where do I want to be in 5 years and 10 years? The investment world has done a decent job of like building out a plan and telling you things you should do and be able to look in the future. You just have to be able to course correct because it's never a straight line. And so I think, consumers are hungry just tell me what to do. Like,
Yeah.
tell me, this is what I want. This is where I want to get to. Just be honest and authentic with me. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Make recommendations. And when I stumble or fall backwards, tell me what I need to do in order to get on the right track. And I think that's where the digital conversation will go. And will it be perfect? No, but it'll be a lot better than where we are today.
Yeah. Okay. So that comes kind of full circle back to, we had parked one of the things of, you were talking about your short stint in doing door-to-door collections and, how rough of a job that was. And today, that's far more digital, right? And that's one of those moments in somebody's life where, like, that's just not a pretty scenario. Nobody wants to be in that scenario, right? On either side of the fence. Nobody really wants to be the one collecting it, and nobody wants to be the one in collections, right? And so much of that has moved to digital, but that's actually a really big opportunity, right? Like, that's a really big opportunity to have a positive impact in somebody's life. That's another potential relationship touch point. So, as we start to move so many more functions to digital, how do we make sure that those digital touch points and interactions are positive, build the brand and the culture like every employee at Disney?
Yeah.
How does that digital interaction embody that? And how does somebody say, hey, you know what? I'm collections with this credit union, but they actually made me feel really good about it. And they were there
Yeah.
and they were in my corner.
I think understanding the situation and having a different path for people depending on what their situation is. So that's, and then when you get on the other side of it, I think you need to sell hope, right? Hey, we understand you're in this situation now, but if you do these things, like, this is going to be really good for you. Like, this is what this is going to feel like in the future when things are organized and you're on top of it. There's going to be much better peace of mind. Those stories, and bringing in stories from others that were in the same situation but got out of it, and how they feel about it. And it wasn't easy. It was hard. There's no silver bullet. There's no kind of like easy way to do it. You got to put in the work, just like anything else in life.
Yeah. Well, and so what do you think is going to change with more people moving to those conversations being digital versus physical?
More real life examples, I think, of consumers that experienced a similar thing, and this is how they went about it. So it's like people like me, like, hey, I was in this situation, and this is how they chipped away at it and made progress, and now how good they feel about making progress. That can be examples. There's got to be a way to communicate that with the consumer.
Yeah. One of the things I'm really curious to see how you were already starting to see some of this. We're already dabbling in this pretty heavily. Dabbling's not even the right word. We're heavily playing in this space is, inserting AI into financial services. And I'll give you a perfect personal example that I think you'll align to, JB. I don't know if you've already done this, but so I have a whole Claude agent and a whole conversation about my personal health and fitness. And it's gotten gnarly. I mean, I've got all of my like blood work, all of my DEXA scans, photos, downloads from my smart scale, exports of my fitness pal and my eating habits, everything into there about optimizing my health, my longevity, managing for travel and stress and all of this stuff. And I'm having like wickedly crazy conversations with this thing about how to optimize this, how to do it. And what's funny is that it was literally last night, JB, I had the realization. I was like, man, I've been doing this with my health and fitness stuff. I was like, I should do the same thing with my finances, and I'm curious what it comes back with, right? So I think, along those same lines, like, we're kind of at this interesting intersection where digital is almost making us less personal and less relational. But now we're getting to the point where it's actually making it even more because we're able to be much more nuanced and targeted and specific. And, that was what I found was like going through and just talking about my own personal health and fitness, like it was deeply personal. And it was with an AI agent.
I would say, Josh, on that one though, moderation, right? Like, you got to live your life. You got to have a little fun. If you need to have dessert, have dessert. You want to have a cocktail, like moderation, right? Like,
Well, yeah,
and
but
you can microanalyze that, just like you were talking about with the stock market. You can't watch the stock market every day. You can't look at every little nuance, but as long as you, employ good habits over time, you're gonna have a bad habit now and again, and moderation. That's what I
well,
would say.
what's
Live
funny
your
is
life. My
that
brother's a heart surgeon, right?
okay.
He was a vascular surgeon, then became a heart surgeon. Anyway, he was over at my house the other day, and he was eating salami and had a big hunk of brie cheese, right? Like two things that are probably, and he doesn't take statins. And he's like, there's something to be said for happiness.
Mhm.
And this piece of cheese and this salami and this glass of wine make me happy.
Really happy.
And I'll work out tomorrow and I'll do a long bike ride. Right now, I'm not worried about it. I'm eating this cheese, this salami, and having a glass of wine.
Well, okay. All right. I'm glad you said this because I think this opens up to exactly what I was trying to say.
Moderation.
I don't think I was doing a good job of. So here's why I say I think it's a really big opportunity for us to be able to use actually the digital and a lot of these AI tools to actually become hyper personal. So I'm one of the people that really argues that when you're leveraging AI tools, there has got to be an expert human in the loop, right? Because without it, to your point, I think you can get really hyper fixated. You can get confirmation bias, like all sorts of things. And it will absolutely still give completely wrong information and things. But when you insert a human in the loop that actually understands and cares and focuses on, navigating the right course, it can have a really big impact. So literally perfect case in point. So as I'm having this whole conversation with my Claude agent about it, some of the things that I told it. So coming into this, like I would argue I've been, pretty deep in my health and fitness journey before. I would argue I'm a decent expert in that.
You're maniacal, Josh.
I'm
You're
maniacal, yes. But like, so literally some of the things I said, non-negotiable, I have dessert every single day. And I was like, that is pure, this has nothing to do with my health and fitness. This has everything to do with my happiness.
But have it when you want it. You
Yeah.
don't have to have, like, oh, I got to check my dessert
No.
box. Like, if you don't want it, you don't want it.
You don't
If
want
you want
to
it,
do
you
that.
want it.
But and one of the other things I told it was I was like, my wife bakes homemade sourdough. I'm gonna eat a half a loaf of that thing every day, right? But it was just so a part of the conversation was I said, hey, look, like I want to look at this and I want to understand what are the AI level insights into this, but I also want to understand. I want to just live my life, and I could totally get hit by a bus tomorrow, and you could do all the things right. So it's still really important for me to be happy. And the reason I use that as an example is I could very easily go in and feed all of my stuff to ChatGPT or whatever and say, analyze all my finances and give me the perfect credit score and do all these things. But does it really and truly set me up for my definition of success? And that's one of the things that I've talked a lot about on the podcast, especially when it comes to finances. Everybody's definition of success is a little bit different. And I think we can agree on some mutual definitions of success, right? But for some people, there are different definitions of success. And so actually having somebody that's sitting there that works as a part of a community financial institution, that understands, that cares, that wants to build a relationship, coupled with these tools, can say, hey, look, here's the perfect world. But JB, I know that it's still really important for you to have that really fun, big Super Bowl party. And that's going to mean, eating a bunch of, beer cheese nachos. And that's going to mean spending maybe a few extra bucks that you weren't planning on because you really wanted to host people and have a good time. And so I'm going to understand that context. And I think that's where the human element comes into the digital. That, man, that's what, just between you and me, like that's what scares me if we lose. Because I think that's kind of the secret sauce to all of this.
Yeah, the question of whether agents can learn that, learn how you like to be communicated to, learn, your voice and moderate the recommendations based on that. It's not there yet, but you wonder if it could get there.
Yeah, I know. And I think it probably will to some extent, but you're an
I think there'll
extrovert,
always
right?
be some type of human interaction coupled with it. But again, I can't see into the future, so I don't know exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, what's happened just the last couple of years is pretty crazy. But I think, you're an extrovert, right? You're always going to want people in your life. And maybe not everybody's like that, but we're human. We
I'm not going to have an AI agent
connectivity.
party.
Yeah, no, there. That is that's the tagline for this episode. I'm not going to have an AI agent party. Like I'm not inviting ChatGPT and Claude to the Super Bowl party. Okay, like it's Bill and Tom and Fred. Yeah, that's just it, man. We're all human. We want to have human experiences. We
I
all
always
live
think
life. We
it's
want to have
funny.
fun.
We're getting off on a tangent of maybe what this podcast is, but when my kids are younger, their friends are over, and they were sitting on the couch texting each other. I'm like, you're sitting right next to the person. What are you doing? Like, and they'll giggle, and then they'd laugh, and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, the person's sitting right there. So, anyway.
I don't know. I'm curious. So have you, I mean, I guess your kids are older now, right? But have
28,
you seen,
26, and 23. Yep.
have you seen that change? Like, have you seen them gone back to,
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
now I actually would prefer to spend less time on my phone and more time with my friends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
I feel like I'm seeing more of that too. Even just in my own circle, friends that are like, yeah, I actually don't text as many people as I used to. I actually try to like go over to their house for dinner now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know.
Well,
There's
especially
hope
if
for
they're
us.
at your house.
Yeah. Exactly. JB, it's just been an absolute pleasure. As always, you do not disappoint with bringing the energy and enthusiasm. But before I let you go, I got a final question for you. So if people want to connect with you or if they want to learn more about SavvyMoney, how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. JB Orecchia. SavvyMoney.com. Got, some interesting stuff there, but, I'm out at pretty much every conference. So, yeah, reach out. Love to connect.
Well, thank you so much for coming and just making my day.
I have a limit at my
having
Super
some
Bowl party,
laughs.
so I can only get 10 extra rib.
I was
And,
gonna ask,
and
but
like
it's cool.
Eight tri-tips, so
yeah.
it's there is a limit to that. So
You just need a bigger
I
smoker.
don't need a
man.
line all of a sudden. There'd be this line at my Super Bowl party.
Well, all of a sudden, JB's LinkedIn instant messengers. Can I get an invite to the Super Bowl?
Can I get
party?
your rib recipe?
Can I get it?
Maybe.
Or it's can you come and do a Elvis impersonation for my party?
Yeah.
And,
I'm not quitting my day job and going into singing, but decent. Yeah.
JB, you're the best, man. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for being a guest on the Digital Banking Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast, powered by Tyfone. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.